If you have a Bible and you find it helpful to follow along, please turn in it to John, the 16th chapter. This is where we'll be spending our time today. I'm trying something new out here with my laptop. Just let it lay flat and see if that'll work. This way I can see everybody. Everybody. One of the things that's neat, I think, about the Gospels, and it's always impressed me, is the fact that when you read the Gospels and you read the words of Jesus as we have them, you realize that in many, many instances, Jesus is opening a window into a realm that we couldn't know anything about if He'd not told us. We just have no way to know. We would have experience, perhaps, but experience is not trustworthy. And so when Jesus takes a window like the one He's going to open for us today and tells us something about what's inside that realm, I just think, wow, I mean, He is granting us to know things that we would have no means to know. That's pretty amazing. And God has given humanity this incredible power that you and I can turn back to God and just say no. Plus, He has given us to be able to choose things that He will not choose for us in any way. Let's take a look at this text. It's a short text and see what it would tell us about this. I'm going to begin reading in John chapter 16, verse 12. Jesus says, I have many more things to say to you, but you can't bear them now. But when He, the Spirit of truth, comes, He will guide you into all truth. He will not speak on His own authority, but will speak whatever He hears and will tell you what is to come. He will glorify Me because He will receive from Me what is mine, and He will tell it to you. And everything that the Father has is mine. That's why I said the Spirit will receive from Me what is mine, and He will tell it to you. So Jesus has opened a window here into a realm that we have no connection with at all. That God is going to speak through Jesus things to us through His Spirit, which we would have no way of knowing about. How would we know that? That the Spirit of God is going to come in this way? We wouldn't have any idea. And it's interesting in the way He speaks it here, because there's a way in which this message that He teaches them today and teaches us is exclusive to a group of people on the planet. It's not for everybody. And think about what that means. It means that it's reserved for those who belong to Him only. And this leaves a gigantic swath of humanity completely out of this perspective. There is no connection they have to it whatsoever. And it tells us something else too about that. The fact that that swath of humanity exists that knows nothing about this tells us that there's a swath of humanity who has refused the gift and continues to refuse it. The Spirit of truth doesn't speak to them. There's an inside group, and that's those who've called the name of Jesus. Now, what's the problem with the outside group? What's their problem? The problem they have is what we call self-righteousness. Now, that term, I got to be very careful here, because we get a picture of self-righteousness, right? It's somebody with their nose up in the air, and they're right and you're wrong, and they know what's right and you don't. That is not what self-righteousness means in the biblical sense at all. You see, self-righteousness comes from a good turn of a human heart. It does. It comes from the turn of a human heart that is listening to its conscience and says, I would like to do the right thing. Nobody actively seeks to do evil, for the most part. I realize there are evil people, no question, but most people are not evil. Most people are seeking, in being self-righteous, to do the right thing. They want to do the right thing. Their conscience has spoken to them. They know what the right thing is pretty well, and that's what they want to do. I will never forget it. There are some things in life, I know you've all got them, the experiences, where something is said to you that stays with you forever. A small thing. I remember we were here on Wednesday, and this is years ago, when Jackson was about 12, 13, along in there. He had been going to the youth group over in Waycross. And he suddenly just said, Dad, I don't like what's going on in there. The people are sitting around there talking while Mr. John is trying to teach. He said, they don't like me. He said, can I go with you on Wednesday night? Well, what am I going to say? No, I'm not going to say that. I said, you come on. And so for a couple of 3 years, Jackson, a kid, would come and sit right about where Becky's sitting right now every Wednesday night with me. He wanted to come with me, and I'll never forget it. We were driving home, and he always asked questions when we were driving home. And the conversation on that Wednesday was to the effect of, why do people reject the Lord? And we were having conversations about that. And Jackson said to me something that was just amazing. He said, Dad, don't you think people are just trying to live their lives? I thought, that's exactly what people are doing. People aren't looking at the gospel and saying, I don't want that. They're not looking at it and saying, I can't believe that. They're not even bothering to think about it. They're living their lives. So self-righteousness, which is the problem, that is why people do not have the Spirit of truth speaking to them, is that they want to do good. They want to live to a standard that they know is there. Their consciences are telling them there's a standard that's there, and they know it. But I don't want to be told what to do. There's a gigantic chasm between living one's life to do the right thing because they think it the right thing, or I think it the right thing, and doing the right thing because God says it's the right thing. That is a gigantic chasm that can only be bridged by a person surrendering themselves to the Lord. It's not going to be bridged any other way. The people resist that without knowing they're resisting it. That's so important to realize. They resist it because in coming close, you have an encounter with a being who is so right that his rightness exposes the fact that we are so wrong. And nobody likes that. We can't bear the rightness of God, and so we don't come any closer, a lot of us. And this is expressed in so many ways. It's expressed in our very ethos in this country. Freedom. There's a flag. I think it might be New Hampshire's flag. I'm not sure. It might be Maine's. You'll have to look it up. It says, don't tread on me. What does that mean? It means you can't tell me what to do. That is self-righteousness in the truest sense of the term. And we seek freedom in so many ways. There's so many ways we express it. Take, for instance, medicine. I have a headache. I want to be free of the headache, so I go and get some Nuprin. Or I need a surgery to intervene in some way, so I go to the surgery. Medicine frees us from a lot of the things that would debilitate us otherwise, right? So we seek that out. We seek science to free us, right? Science tells us all kinds of things. We don't think that lightning is God throwing thunderbolts at us anymore to punish us. We know that static electricity creates lightning, so science frees us from thinking that it's just wrong. Technology frees us, right? I mean, I use a nail gun at work. I mean, I go up to a piece of trim and go boom, and the nail goes in and the hole is set, and I don't have to do anything else, and I'm not going to beat it with a hammer when I miss the nail. I'll never forget my partner in Pennsylvania. We bought our first nail gun. It was a trim gun. I still have that gun because I bought it. And I'm in there shooting some crown mold up, and Henry's my partner's kind of standing off to the side, and I said, boy, that thing sure is loud. He said, yeah, sounds like the cash register to me. And he was exactly right. That's the way Henry thought. A lot better businessman than Rip is. Information frees us. We get all kinds of information. That technology that brings us information about the world. I would wager that we would probably just now be hearing about Ukraine if this were 120 years ago. We wouldn't even have known there was a war. And if we heard about it, it would just be rumors. Communication frees us. I am still just overcome that I can take this device that's the size of a few playing cards stacked up out onto the street, and I can call California and talk to somebody there like they're across the street from me. That's just amazing to me. So we're not isolated. Government in this country frees us. Representative government sets forth a constitution so that we know what to expect, and we're free to move about and do things without a lot of fear of any kind of government intervention in our lives. So all of this speaks to the fact that self-righteousness comes alongside the fact that human beings' natural condition is freedom. That's our natural condition, right? We were put in the garden, had no rules except one. So the natural condition is to yearn for that kind of freedom. But there's an illusion that comes also, and the illusion is self-righteousness is actually real, and that I can be good enough that God has to accept me. As a matter of fact, I talk to people weekly who would say that if God doesn't accept me as being the nice person that I am, He's immoral for rejecting me. That's how strongly self-righteousness comes into the picture. And again, it's from a good turn of heart. I'm a nice guy. I want to do the right thing most of the time. I don't cheat. I don't lie. I pay my taxes. I do all these good things. I'm nice to little ladies when they come to the door. I open it for them. I help people with their groceries. I give money to the Salvation Army, whatever it is. And all of these features are good things coming from self-righteousness. I'm a good person. And so if God won't have me, I'm going to turn back to Him and say, God, you are immoral, that you will not accept me. Isn't it funny that the psalmist says, speaking for God, as God speaks through the psalmist, at the appointed time I judge, and I judge fairly. So freedom is an illusion if we think that we're free apart from what God says freedom is. It's a total illusion. Let me explain that. Take medicine, for instance. It frees us from the headache. I can go take the Nuprin and my head stops hurting. But I have to buy the Nuprin. I'm not just doled out Nuprin. If I want to go to the doctor, I've got to pay the bill. I've got to pay the insurance premiums. I had to have an implant put in my mouth. It costs a lot of money. Medicine freed me from the loss of a tooth that I broke into 4 pieces in my mouth, but it didn't free me from having to pay for it. There's an enslavement that comes with these things that we think make us free. And it's a deep enslavement. Science, all right? Science has taught us so many things about the human body, about how to live, how to eat, how to do. Yes, science gave us thalidomide, which was supposed to set women free from morning sickness. Guess how that turned out? Lots of deformed children, deformed people. Technology we use ties us to it as an enslavement. The communication technology that we have, not only does it give us a lot of information, but it also muddles our minds and crushes our spirit. We're enslaved to it, but it's hurting us. It is. It monopolizes our time. We carry these devices around, and no matter what we're doing, it doesn't matter. We can be in a state funeral, and boy, if that thing pings or flashes or whatever it does, it's saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. That's what the things are saying to us all the time. Look at me. It just reminds me so much of Martha and Mary in the Gospels. You know, Martha was all concerned about getting all the food ready, and she comes out there and says, Jesus, you need to tell Mary to help me. And Jesus says, she's chosen the better thing. She's chosen the better thing. Representative government frees us in that I don't have to know everything about every detail of law in order to live in this country. But I got to pay somebody to go do that. And boy, do they love to be paid. They enjoy collecting those taxes in order that they can serve, as they would see it, you and me. But there's an enslavement there because they're making laws that we have to obey. So it doesn't matter what freedom we think we have based upon anything that would detach itself from God, it turns out to be an enslavement. It's an enslavement. And this is contrary to God's original intent for the cosmos, which is that we would be free. Anything that attempts to free us apart from God is an enslavement. Anything. So where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us with some real decisions, I think, that we need to make, all of us, myself included. If the Spirit of truth is really guiding us, as Jesus has said, how does that become reflected in normal everyday life? I mean, can anybody see it? Can anybody look at Rip Snow and say, I know that Rip is listening to the Spirit of truth? I don't know. I hope they can. But I'm sure that there are lots of instances, I know there are, where they don't know that because I'm behaving in a way that says I'm not listening to the Spirit of truth. Do our daily mundane lives reflect what Jesus has said we have been given, which is the Spirit of truth is going to come and teach us everything that Jesus wanted to teach us? Everything that he has belongs to Jesus, and he's going to give it to us as teaching. But does my life look like I'm influenced by it? Do we make decisions on just the smallest of things that say, I'm hearing from God? Let me just give you some examples of what this might look like in us. Maybe it would look like we look for opportunities to prefer other people over ourselves. I think it would look like that if we're listening to the Spirit of truth, right? Jesus said, I didn't come to be served, but to serve, to give my life as a ransom for many. Are we looking to bless other people, just to bless them at our expense? Whatever that is, maybe it's just 10 minutes of time, maybe it's a little energy, maybe it's a little money, maybe it's a little of all of it. But are we looking, is the Spirit of truth guiding us to seek those opportunities where we can just be a blessing to somebody? It's a beautiful thing. Do we have repentant, teachable hearts always? Or do we have a chip on our shoulder? I'm thinking of somebody who I'll not mention at all. But there are lots of us that have chips on our shoulders that we will not surrender, even if God asks us to surrender. We declare them as non-negotiables. And my question to anybody who's got that, I have them, you have them, we all have them, some place in our life where we say to God, you can come that far but no further. Are they worthy of offending God? I can't answer that question except for me. I hope not. A person who loves others sufficiently to give up something of themselves on behalf of what they say they feel. Love. That's a person who's listening to the Spirit of truth, I think. A person who has no non-negotiables relative to God. That's a person who's listening to the Spirit of truth. You know who the freest person on earth is? The lost. The lost. In terms of their human existence, the lost are the freest people on human terms that there are. Because they say, nobody's going to tell me what to do. It's an illusion. It's an illusion, but in their minds, they are the freest people there are. You and I are the slaves. Well, Jesus said to his disciples, stumbling blocks will come, but woe to them through whom the stumbling blocks come. It would be better for them to have a millstone tied around their neck and be thrown into the sea than to cause any of these little ones to stumble. That's pointing at us and saying, are we listening to the Spirit of truth in our daily affairs such that people can actually see that we are? And the problem with this picture of freedom on the human level where the lost are free, why do they think themselves free? Well, because if self-righteousness is real, and if a person thinks, I can live good enough that God has to accept me, what are they saying? They're saying, I want justice more than I want mercy. You see, if God is just and he looks at my life as a good person, he's immoral if he doesn't accept me on the basis of me being a good person. That's self-righteousness. But I can tell you, they don't realize what they're asking for. Nobody should want God's justice. because it is absolute, final, and perfect, and we're not. You see, God is making an offer to us that He cannot choose for us. He can't choose it. He cannot choose for us that we would listen to the Spirit of truth. He can't. He's taken His hands off and He said, it's your will or it's my will. You get to pick. But we can take the offer that He gives us, which is to stand before Him and say, you're right and I'm wrong, and I want your clemency. I don't want your justice. I want mercy, not justice. He gives us that power to stand in front of Him and make that choice. And every person has it. I don't know where everybody is today, but if I've said anything about which you've got a question, you want to pray with